2 raging book nerds, 14 years of friendship, and 1 burning question.
If Katniss Everdeen posted on Reddit, would she be the arsehole?
Welcome to Once Upon a Red Flag. This season, we're stepping into Panem, where every tribute, tyrant, and mentor gets their day in the Am I the Asshole courtroom.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Rachel.
And join us while we read between the red flags and break down the Hunger Games, one questionable decision at a time. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 7 of Once Upon a Red Flag. I can't believe we've actually got this far. We are really dedicated to this series.
You're like, we've got to episode 7, we're well dedicated. I'm like, love, we've got like 23 episodes planned out minimum.
I know we've got
like
a long way to go, but we're now obviously like going into Catching Fire and exploring the Catching Fire world, and that is my favorite Hunger Games book. Well, my favorite OG like trilogy Hunger Games book, and I'm really excited to get into it. It's going to be like a really beefy episode.
I'm going to stop you there a second. So you've said just then that this is your favourite OG Hunger Games book. Does that mean one of the prequels has beaten out the main trilogy for you?
So Sunrise on the Reaping. Honestly, I loved it so much. It was heartbreaking. It was heart-wrenching. It really made me cry. Obviously, I do need to speak about the fact that the Sunrise on the Reaping trailer came out yesterday, and I'm getting all like warm and excited, and I'm gonna cry because it came out when I was at work, and I watched it. Obviously, I work in film and TV anyway, so it wasn't a complete write off, and
you can justify it, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I was watching it, I was like, oh my god, I could just feel like my body just going like, oh my god. And I'm just thinking, in 1 year, how many times am I going to be at that cinema watching this film,
watching the same film over and over and over again?
Yeah, I'm so excited. And hopefully, I don't think it'll be disappointing. I mean, it looks so good from the trailer, and the costume design and the casting they've done is really next level. They should really win awards for that, because it's like really creepy how well they've managed to do that. But yeah. So to answer your question, to backtrack, Rachel, Sunrise on the Reaping.
Sunrise on the Reaping.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite trilogy books. Not trilogy.
Hunger Games.
The ones that come before the original Hunger Games.
Prequel.
Sorry,
it's been a long day
at work. It's been a long day at work.
It's 6:30 on a Friday evening for us.
Yeah, it's been a long day. And then OG Catching Fire. What about you? I don't actually know. I can tell you weren't expecting this question.
I'm not expecting this question, no. I think I agree with Catching Fire for the main, purely because the arena, I found the arena so much more interesting.
Yeah.
In this section, and how the politics comes into play and everything sort of ramps up. And I do find Mockingjay a bit... This is going to sound really weird in comparison to the fact that I actually love like high fantasy, but I find Mockingjay a bit too political. But I think, like, for my brain to comprehend, but I think a lot of this is my opinions on it that were obviously formed when I was 16.
True.
Reading this for the first time, and then it's hard to reread a series that I read when I was 16 and not slip back into how I felt about it then. When it comes to the prequels, it is Sunrise on the Reaping, purely because, oh dear sweet lord, how many pages about President Snow can I read before I want to yeet him out of a window?
What are you talking about? Ballad of Songbird and Snakes.
Yes.
Yeah, I felt the same, especially when I was doing I did a re-listen for this one, because I did the audiobook when we were going through that one for the soon to be coming episodes, and obviously it's done by a male narrator, and just in my head I'm like, this is President Snow. And every time I heard the voice, I was like, he's annoying me. He's just really annoying me. I don't care. Like, I really struggled to get through it. I think when I read it, it was a bit easier, but the audiobook was like, it's a guy. And I just...
Yeah. I found it interesting in the fact that, so when we agreed to do this podcast and do Hunger Games for the first season, I'd only read the Hunger Games once, and I hadn't picked them up since I was 16.
Oh my god.
Genuinely, because 16-year-old me had some very, very spicy takes on the epilogue at the end of Mockingjay. which we will get into. Adult me understands, but I read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping, knowing that it would become like part of the podcast analysis. So then it was interesting to read through it and go, okay, like let's find the assholes as
Right.
opposed to let's get on board with the asshole story. I think if I was reading Ballad for the first time without expecting it to be I guess just assholey, without expecting it to be like one of those books where you hate almost everyone you read about, because I like to really get on board with my main characters. I like to like put myself in their shoes and find some common ground with them, and there's very little common ground I can find with President Snow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll
Even as
really
a
get into
teen.
that. I'll really get into that when we go into the Songbirds and Ballads and Snakes episodes.
It's a
But ironically,
mouthful, isn't it?
that actually wasn't the icebreaker for this episode. That kind of came out of
That
nowhere.
wasn't.
The actual icebreaker we're going to ask ourselves, Rachel, for this week is, okay, well, I think Snow picks a very weird hill to die on in these episodes. But before we get into this, what's one hill you were willing to completely die on in a silly debate?
I am probably going to totally dox myself when I say this, because it's a very, very regional thing, but I will die on the hill of my right to call a bread roll a tea cake, because I know
I don't understand this.
it's a tea. Right.
I don't understand as a southerner why you got to call them tea cakes. The tea cakes has raisins in it.
That's a fruit tea cake. We have a whole separate terminology for a fruit tea cake. If we don't say fruit tea cake and call it a tea cake, it's a bread roll.
See, but the tea seems to imply that it should be sweet, and a bread roll, typically, unless you're doing a bread roll that has icing on it, which is like a completely different breed of bread roll. Like, no. It's not that I completely object. It's just that my brain cannot
comprehend.
Why you want to call it that.
This is how I've grown up. Sugar's a tea cake, and I'll make a sandwich out of it. Like, that is just, I don't have any way of explaining why it's a tea cake. It just is.
Okay.
It just is. It just is. A toasted tea cake is not a fruit tea cake. A toasted tea cake is I have literally just put a bread roll in the toaster and buttered it. And
I don't understand you sometimes. I really don't. I know we've been friends
a
for a really long
breed.
time, but yeah, sometimes I really don't. I mean, so when it comes to like my hill that I will die on, and I know I did have to think about this a lot because I couldn't actually think of many hills that I would die on. But one I did come up with was, this is very British. This is like very, when you make a good British brew, that you put the milk in second and not first.
But I don't get this, because that's the right answer. So why do you die on that hill?
My dad doesn't do that. He puts the milk in first and the boiling water in second.
How do you know how much milk you need?
Well, that's my exact point. Unless, I think his argument is like, oh, he's been making tea for so many years. He knows exactly how, like, him and my mum wants it. He knows exactly how much milk to put in. So it's fine. We're like, well, if you've got guests coming over, how,
is he using the exact same mug every time? Because surely the second you change the size of the mug, the ratio of how much milk you need would change.
I think he's just gotten used to using every single different mug over time.
So he knows exactly how much milk to put in.
I think it's experience.
But then your tea bag's all milky still.
But I do agree, Rachel. I do agree that is the wrong way to do it, and that the hot water should go in first, and then the milk should go in second. Because otherwise, I have a bit of a panic attack. Because I'm like, well, if I put in that much milk, you can't then take the milk back out.
You can't take the milk back out.
Once you put the water in,
and then you end up with a brew that looks like as pale as I did pre-holiday. Like it looks like a ghost, and you can't fix that unless you leave the tea bag in for about 10 minutes, and by that point your brew's cold.
Moving on, are we going to get into the post of today and talk about the weird hill the President Snow wants to die on?
Yeah, he has a few, let's be honest. Like, he's willing to sacrifice a heck of a lot for 17-year-old's romance, but Shall we read his post first before we call him an asshole, or shall we just call him an asshole now?
Let's do it the way we're actually meant to do it, shall we? Let's read the post, but I think we already know what we're going to do.
So, Snow's username, if he ever had a brain cell enough to realise that maybe he should make a post on Reddit, is lands on top. Of course, if you've read Sunrise, no, if you've read Ballad, you'll know. You'll know. But Snow says, am I the asshole for keeping peace through fear? I, male, indeterminate age, am responsible. I had fun with this one as well. I'm responsible for maintaining peace in a nation that nearly destroyed itself. Years ago, there was an attempted revolution and the entire country was at war with itself. It caused absolute chaos, starvation, ruin, countless deaths. When I came into power, I was determined to maintain order, structure, and balance. Every year, we remind the districts of what the rebellion cost them, with a televised competition called the Hunger Games. It may be brutal, but it is effective. For 75 years, there have been no more wars, no more uprisings, no more anarchy. People work, they eat, and they live. Obviously, it goes further than the games. A once-a-year event wouldn't be enough to keep everything under control. But we have strict laws and a robust policing system, and these things are completely the norm. I keep a delicate balance between hope and fear to stop the masses from causing more death and destruction. Someone is now trying to upset this delicate balance. I've given her the chance to settle it down, and she did not succeed. Now I am trying everything I can think of to undo the rioting she has caused. Nothing seems to be working. My go-to methods have been to quiet troublemakers through fear, but even that doesn't seem to help this time. I feel like I'm missing some easy solution that would calm everything back down again. The lives of the important people in the capital are at risk because this girl has a stubborn streak and keeps coming back like a persistent infection. Have I been too lenient up until now? Am I the asshole for using fear as a tool to calm the masses? Should I have gone further? This was a hard one to write, I'll be honest, guys, because Snow is probably the only person in the entire book series who has zero redeeming qualities. There's no soft side to work in here.
And at this point as well, we don't know his background. We obviously haven't got to Ballad yet. We haven't got to kind of that context or how he come into power. So really, if you're not considering any of that, yes, he is. But let's kind of get into it.
So before we get really deep into all of Snow's red flags, those many red flags he shows us in Catching Fire, let's just zoom out a little bit to the general setup that this guy's got going on. Because we've already analysed the actual games themselves to death. No pun intended.
Very funny.
Jeez. But we picked this book up with Katniss and Peter as the victors, right? About to embark on their tour of the districts. So I kind of want to talk about the whole concept of the victory tour first. Because this is kind of an extension of the games, right? Because the whole idea of the victory tour is to not let the horror of the games fade from memory to die out. So it's not a once a year kind of concept where you get a rough month and then you get to forget about it afterwards. You literally have 6 months to get over having watched a bunch of kids get slaughtered, and then after that's happened, you're slowly picking yourself back up again, and then you see the people who slaughtered your kids straight in front of you in your district on a stage right there. It just gets shoved straight back into your face. And we're not even talking about the actual victors yet. We're talking about the districts that are suffering for having to see the people who killed their kids in the flesh on there straight away. You've singled out the families who've lost these kids yet again. You've got them on podiums right in front of the entire nation on camera.
And they're getting forced to celebrate it as well. That's what I found so horrible. It's a celebration that the kids have died, and that's their essentially murderer. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it is a celebration. I didn't even think of it in that way. I was thinking about they're right in front of you on a stage that's been put there. But it is a victory tour, isn't it? It is full on about, let's celebrate that these two kids, or these two kids in the scenario, but this one kid usually just slaughtered everyone. We didn't bring any of this stuff up previously, because we were kind of focusing on the games themselves, because that was the first time we're seeing them in the first book. But it's brought up by Peter, like, during this game, something that I completely forgot about until I reread this. So
Okay.
he's trying to calm Katniss down after the Jabberjays have attacked. So she's basically had this emotional trauma of thinking that her loved ones are being tortured. And she's thinking like that, well, that's the only way that they've got hold of their voices and all this stuff. And he's basically saying, well, what happens? What happens when you reach the final 8? We're almost down to the final 8 in this arena. What happens when you reach that? And she's like, 7 more of us die. And he's like, no. We will guess.
Yes, but
But yes, but that's not what I
Mm-hmm.
mean. Basically, when they reach the final 8, they interview all the family members back home as well. So they bring Prim out, they bring her mother and Gale. And so, like, even then during the games, you're being tortured over the fact that your kid is in the games. So we focused a lot on the kids in the games last time. But now your kid's in the games and you're watching them mandatory viewing every single evening that your child is there constantly. You don't get to look away. And then, oh my God, they might finally, like, they're still going. It's still, I'm still being tortured knowing that they're going to die at some point. Like, the odds are not in their favor. But yes, let me talk to you, Lisa Flickerman,
let me
about
be
how
interviewed.
great my child is doing right now, clinging on to life by the skin of their teeth. And let's just talk to you about it live on TV. And oh, look, there they are dead. Do you want my live reaction to that? Do you? Fantastic. Because that is exactly what would happen.
It's so twisted. Like, they've got so much to worry about. The emotional state you must be in, seeing your child, your sister, your brother, whatever, your cousin, like literally down to that point, so close to potentially winning, so close to nearly coming home and not coming home in a casket, essentially. And then for them to be like, oh, you must be so proud of your son or your daughter. You must be so proud of them for getting this far. Do you think they're going to make it? You're asking me to think whether my child will make it or not. It's just, I don't understand.
If you're in a if you're in a career district, I bet you really do love this attention. However, that is 3 people out of everyone who could possibly be interviewed who would totally lap this. And so you go through all that, and like, these games last weeks, right? And then 6 months later, there you are again on a platform in front of everyone. But your sorrow at your kid being killed, because obviously your kid's dead because there's someone else in front of you right now. Your sadness is then being broadcast. There's a camera on you as well. There's a camera on all of Rue's family and Thresher's family during all this. You're getting grand old primetime TV clips out of this crying mother who's being forced to relive her child's death. How fun!
God, it's terrible. It's so terrible. I think, kind of talking about the victory tour before we get into all the specifics. Obviously, the victory tour is the first time Katniss and Peter are seeing the other districts. Like, even if they are areas of the districts that are put on for show, you know, they're kind of dressed up all pretty, they're kind of very much controlled. But they remark at how District 11 is huge. The security is huge. The barbed wire fences are so tall. Like, it's beyond what they could have imagined. I remember Katniss says, oh, in school they tell us it's just a large district. They don't go into anything else because obviously they don't really share information about the districts. But she remarks how they've definitely not really put that into perspective when she sees how big it is. And obviously we know it's for farming and agriculture and food and everything, so we can kind of imagine how big that's going to have to be. So they find out things that they wouldn't have known before. Like, we know the understanding speech, it's not something which is common knowledge, but something I do find interesting is how Katniss says that there are so many people and therefore by proxy so many children, and that she is surprised by the small amount of children they see on TV during Reaping Day. Which I was like, oh yeah, like I in my head I'm like, that is weird, because she speculates how they know the children they choose to be in the main square are the ones that obviously end up being reaped. So does that mean it's partially rigged before that happens? Because, you know, the ones who are being reaped have to be there. It can't be ones that haven't been able to come to the square that day. So it's just up to some children know that they haven't been reaped ahead of time. Like,
Oh
can you
dear
imagine
God.
being like, oh, I know I'm in that small pool of children, but it might still not be me.
Oh dear Lord.
But is your
Yeah,
fate already
because
sealed, or?
I guess that's part of it as well, is they probably would have to do that because like like you've said, they only tell her in school that it's a large district, quote. Like, what does
Mhm.
large mean? Like, you can say District 12 is a small district or a medium-sized district, but you have no other frame of reference to know, like, well, what do you class as small? Like, because you can like, large eggs in a supermarket are not ostrich eggs, are they?
Yeah.
Like, that's the ratio kind of thing that we're dealing with here. But then
Mhm.
I guess you have to kind of like pre-call out these names, or I think what scares me more is the idea that maybe these kids aren't pre-selected by a different type of reaping. Maybe these kids are, or their families are being punished in some way. And so these kids are like being picked as, well, you guys kids are safe because you've played ball with the laws and the rules and you've not stolen anything. But oh yeah, you were caught having a conversation that about something relatively minor in by our standards, but in their world it'd be pretty damn severe. I know, look, now your kid's here, because what other way, if you're gonna hide this level of information, what other way are you gonna hide how large the district is by population size unless you don't show everyone?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking now, is like, obviously to hide kind of this information, they can't clearly have like a huge square full of tons and tons of kids being reaped. It's obviously going to go on TV that people mandatorily like have to watch. So if you're only having kind of a small percentage of the kids there, and even thought about it being from a perspective of these kids' families are being
Punishment.
punished, because how the hell did Rue end up in, like, she even remarks, like, how did Rue end up in that group of free-reaped kids, ending
But
up on the
then
stage without like a whisper of the wind of someone trying to come and help her?
But she also says, doesn't she, how no one helped her? Well, if no
Mm.
one who would have helped her was pre-reaped, then you kind of are stuck. And I guess also if you've been pre-reaped, you're also less likely to volunteer because you've already lived with the fear of, oh, it really might be me.
Yeah.
This is not just it might be, this is it really might be me. Then, oh, dear God, thank God it's not me. Like, you're going to be less willing to volunteer in place of somebody else.
Yeah, I guess it does. It subdues them. It subdues the rebellious appetite, because it's like, that's like terrifying. That's like extra twisted. The more that I think about it in my head.
This is the problem with Snow. The more you think about it, the more twisted he gets.
Yeah, the worse it gets.
Because we're talking about the victory tour here in terms of the families of the tributes who have died in the arena, but we're also not thinking about the torture that this puts on the victors as well. The victors who are supposed to want to celebrate the fact that they've won and they've come out of it.
Yeah.
Well, it keeps the fear alive for them as well, right? Because the victors aren't immune to the terror of what they've already gone through. Like, you'd think that the threat of death no longer hanging over them means they can relax, but no,
Mm.
because they're mentally and emotionally scarred by the situation that they were put in the games. Yes, they've won them, but you're still making them relive it. Not even a
Yeah.
year, like, because obviously we mentioned in the previous episodes how you have to relive it every single year as a mentor. You have to relive it 6 months later as a victor
Yeah.
on the
And
victory
then
tour.
I guess if you're the mentor of a victor later on, like Hamish
You
is, he has to relive it too through them as he
gotta
goes
do the
along with
victory
them on the
tour
victory
again.
tour.
So
Yeah.
it is just like, how do we remind you that we own you, and
Mm.
this is what we have done to you, over and over and over again. And Katniss Evans, I think one of the things that is at the first page that Katniss Evans says, I pulled the direct quote out. She's literally sat on her front porch just watching the world go by, and she turns around and says, if a pack of wild dogs were to appear at this moment, the odds of scaling a tree before they are attacked are not in my favour. I should get up, move around, work the stiffness from my limbs. She
She's
couldn't even
still
sit on her
thinking about
front
those,
porch.
yeah. She's still
She
thinking
can't
about
even
those mutts from the first games, even
that
when she's
come.
technically at home, technically, quote unquote, safe as she can be. I mean, I'm pretty sure she remarks that it's no different to the games. You're still waiting for someone to come along and kill you. It just might take a little bit longer.
It's sad, and you think of all the perks these guys get, right? And they win the house and they win the money. They also get the emotional scarring, and
Mhm.
even then, the good perks don't last, right? So something I picked up on is that Katniss has said she's kept the house in the seam because that's
Mhm.
still the legal residence for her mother and Prim. If anything happens to Katniss, her winnings just stop, basically. Her family has
Terrible.
no entitlement to them. Like, Peter's family isn't too bad. They don't live with him anyway, I think, because they're not that close as a family in the same way Katniss and
Yeah.
her mother and Prim are. But also, they have the bakery. They aren't that hard up in comparison to everybody else. Um, they're still eating stale bread and stuff instead because they can't afford to waste the good stuff. But they're not in such dire straits as Prim and her mother were, living in the seam. And it
Mhm.
probably doesn't make sense to live in the Victor village and have to travel to the bakery every morning because bakeries start really early in the morning, don't they? But so if anything happens to Peter, his family's not any worse off, whereas Katniss's family would have to go back to their house in the seam. They'd be
Yeah.
even worse off, though,
Yeah.
because now if we go into the electric fence being turned back on
By
and
thread. Yeah.
by thread
Mhm.
and them nailing it down at the bottom as well. Gale can't even hunt for Katniss's family. So if anything happens to Katniss, not only do they lose the money and the house, they also can't hunt anymore.
Yeah.
Her mum's still barely scraping by. And her mum, at this point as well, her mum's also, because obviously there's threads appeared and you've got the crackdown of the peacekeepers.
Yeah.
She's stopped even charging for her services as a healer because there's that many people who are being whipped and flogged. She's not even making money at this point.
I think before we get really into how kind of Snow ends up treating District 12 after winning, after getting the victors, after the victory tour, and Katniss obviously not succeeding in convincing him, I think it is good to talk about the core narrative of the second book, which is obviously Catching Fire, which is the 75th Hunger Games, the third quarter quell.
It's a
In my
lot,
head, I
isn't it?
literally just have Effie in my head when I say stuff like that. So, what is a quarter quell? The quarter quell is essentially a special games which occurs every 25 years. These games feature unique and new rules and twists decided by the capital or the game makers or potentially Snow to keep the games fresh and interesting for the capital citizens, but also to keep the district citizens, on their feet. It's not like potentially being raped or having your child raped every year to the age of 18 isn't terrifying enough. If it lines up with a quarter quell, it's extra special and extra terrifying.
Do you know what that makes me think
Terrible.
of? Genuinely makes me go, this is not just games, this is the M&S games. Every time. I don't know why. It's extra special, it's
It's
Tesco's
extra
finest.
special. But before we get into the 25th quarter quell, I want to have a special mention for the first quarter quell, the 25th Hunger Games, when Snow and the game makers probably thought that the game's appeal was being lost with the citizens. They decided to shake it up a bit. So this is the first quarter quell, which honestly makes me feel quite sick. And that's saying something. For the first quarter quell, Snow made the districts vote for their tributes instead of a reaping lottery. So as you can imagine, citizens turned on citizens and meant that people who might have been able to get through the games without feeling like they had blood on their hands did have blood on their hands. So if you were, just a parent that didn't have a child and you thought, oh, it's fine, I'm not going to add to the games, I'm not going to feel like I have any blood on my hands, you then now have to vote for a child to go in, probably to die. So even if you thought you could get away with not feeling like you were complicit in it, you now are. You now have no choice. So every single person was complicit in that child's death, assuming they died, or, the children that the victor kills. And can you imagine how much that must feel for a parent, or especially someone who purposely did not have kids, like Katniss said she was going to do, and then having to vote for a child to go in?
Who would you vote for as well? So
Exactly.
yeah, so I didn't read it the way you've read this. So
Really?
I
Okay.
I read this as when they made the games, they decided they were going to remind them and set the quarter quells up, and it was just this one Snow rigged. I guess that is the question though, right? Snow's rigged this one. We're assuming Snow's rigged this one. How many others did he rig, if that's the case? And
that's a very big question.
What did everyone do to warrant them being rigged to that extent? Because like the Victor thing is one thing, the Victor thing everyone's up in arms about. But the second quarter quell was, obviously we know, like 2 boys and 2 girls from every district. But the first one is particular. This is the worst one. So what was happening then to warrant that?
So this was like 15 years after the Hunger Games that Snow was the first mentor for, right? 10th to 25th. So he's had 15 years after kind of the narrative, which we'll obviously get into in a later episode, of trying to make these games popular, trying to get people to watch these games. And I imagine he probably got 15 years and thought, oh, we need to spice it up a bit. It's kind of the same thing every year. Let's do it every 25 years. We'll have tons more of these and we can get extra creative and extra special. But that is just so messed up on a cellular level and so disturbing.
It can totally be read as, look, here's one I made earlier. It can be read as, look, yes, the people who put the games into place, they set aside all these hundreds of years worth of torturous ways to make the games worse, and we're just gonna tell you about them now. It's the first one. Look, surprise, guys.
I 100% don't think these ideas or these happening at these certain times for quarter quells is at all a coincidence or an accident. Talking about the first quarter quell again, it was designed as an ancient Roman city, designed with ruins. The cornucopia, which goes on to become a huge symbol in the games, makes its first appearance in that first quarter quell. And I feel like this meant every other quarter quell that Snow was going to run had to be more brutal than the last. So the second quarter quell, obviously, you mentioned Sunrise on the Reaping, which we will discuss in later episodes. But we are now on to Catching Fire, which is the third quarter quell, the 75th Hunger Games.
I am going to stop you there a second because I've just thought of something. Okay. And my eyes kind of like bugged out of my head when I thought of it.
Okay.
Is that a method that they used, the cornucopia, just to entice people? If the cornucopia was the first time that they used, they offered the victors, the tributes, a chance. They offered them something. Was that a way they enticed people to vote? Because, well, look, you can vote for them, but for the first time this year, they have weapons given to them. They can, and that makes it even more scary. And I didn't put the cornucopia and the first quarter quell together until just now, and the first one having the voting, and I'm like, oh shit.
So maybe, because we know before that they did give the tribute some forms of weapons, right? But it was just thrown into the arena in the middle, and they're probably very mediocre weapons.
And now you've got a bounty to fight
that kind of
for.
Thing. Yeah, and now you have a cornucopia, which is obviously kind of the symbol of harvest and that kind of thing. And they're stuffing that cornucopia full with food, weapons, supplies to stay alive. It's oh, but look, it's the competition, and we're giving you resources to aid the competition.
Do you reckon they had scoreboards of okay, we need to vote for people, here's who we vote for, and then this person is probably the most prepared and most likely, so we're all going to team up and vote for them?
What, as in when they were deciding what tributes to send off?
Yeah.
But this is the thing, right? There's many theories that Katniss kind of goes around in her head. She's like, well, yeah, you could vote for someone who you think is going to win and do well and is trained, or you can vote for someone you find really annoying down the road who's been doing your head in the entire time that you've known them, and you want to get rid of them. You get rid of the black sheep. they're making us feel uncomfortable. We don't like them. Let's send them off. Or, their child has been causing chaos in this town since they were born. They're really annoying. They cause chaos at school. None of the teachers like them. Let's send them off. It'll be calmer without them around. Yeah, exactly. This is why it literally makes my stomach sink, because I think of how sick this is.
The more you look at it, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, move on quickly. I can't keep thinking about this anymore.
I mean, Rachel, it doesn't get any better. So the 75th Hunger Games, the third quarter quell, we see Snow deciding to reap the tributes from the existing pool of victors for each district. This makes my stomach sink too, because this is huge, and by no means a coincidence that he has decided to do it this year. Let's be honest. The whole point of these people going into the games and killing to win and be a victor is because you are promised that you will never have to want for anything again in your life. You will be safe. You will never have to worry about being reaped. You can live your life in supposed peace. And in one just foul swoop, Snow has just gone, actually didn't mean it. And we will discuss this further in the Returning Victors episode for Catching Fire, because we that obviously just does not go down very well. But this, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but if you're watching, you can see this enrages me so much. It's so like the whole thing is unfair, but this is so unfair, because we know this decision to use this as a third quarter quell twist is a horrible decision on Snow's part and really becomes his downfall. And we will discuss this in more detail. But before we do this, I want to discuss Elder Snow. Like you said, we don't actually know how old he is. Elder Snow and Snow's character and demeanor in himself.
I think that's part of what makes him so scary, though, is because you don't actually know how old he is. You know that he's knocking on a bit. You know that he's gotta be in his what? So he was, if we go by the knowledge that we have for Sunrise and the Reaping, go by what, 18 for them?
Or
for
do you mean
games?
do you mean Ballad
not
of
Sunrise and the Reaping, I mean Ballad of Snakes.
Yeah, so yeah,
he's
that
like one.
just about to turn 18, right? Kind of like at the end of that.
So that was the 10th game. So that puts him in his mid-70s, early 80s.
It's 75th.
That's 65 on.
Can't do the maths.
65 and 18. No, it makes him early 80s. I'm sure it makes him early 80s. Should have done the maths before. It's been a very. I promise I have a degree in this. Not a degree. I promise I have a GCSE in maths. I can do things, but I can't do them in my head this quickly anymore.
I did them, but I did it a very long time ago. Yeah, I did it a very long time ago.
He's not 83.
Yeah.
He's 83 and he's travelling the country to threaten a bunch of 16-year-olds.
We're going to get into that in a second. But yeah, I think that's partly why it's so scary, because you look at him, you see everything that he's doing. Obviously, smells of blood. He has these like snake-like eyes that Katniss remarks him happening. And for a brief moment there, I'm like, how old is this guy? Like, is he 100
he feels
and something?
ageless.
Is he 200 and something? Like, how long has he been around for? Obviously, now he's like grandparent age. It's not as scary. But before we had Ballad and we actually knew his background and we knew how old he was, I think that makes him even scarier, because it's like, is he immortal? He's never going to die.
Yeah, I think when I read them the first time, I kept expecting there to be a twist of him being immortal, being able to like prolong his life in some like sick and twisted capital way, like probably for the blood of young children, to be honest. Like I kind of expected it, because he is this like overarching evil threat where I guess you don't want him to be human. Do you? You want him to be something else, to have othered himself in such a way that he is like the embodiment of pure evil, incarnate, ageless, timeless.
I think it would be less scary, and in that sense, feel more like it could happen in the real world, and therefore be less scary if he wasn't human. I think the fact that he is human makes it scarier, because then you can obviously link that to some people that we have in power and start to see some resemblances, and then you're like, oh my god, like this really, it can escalate. It could escalate that quickly, and it could become something like that. I think that's what makes it really scary, and something that Suzanne Collins has done really well.
I think him being human as well, it kind of makes the fear and hope balance even worse, because you're going, okay, right, he's 83, he smells of blood, doesn't seem like he kind of acts like he's doing all right. It doesn't seem like he's actually doing all right physically. Maybe he'll die and we'll get someone else in power, but then, oh God, what do you expect to be in power next? Is there hope? Will they be better? Will they be worse? Who's his successor? How does this go from here? If he dies, are we in a worse situation than we are now?
So going back to Snow, here's the core way that Snow keeps power over all of Panem is obviously the Hunger Games. Like, that is the main thing throughout the books. But it's not the only way. So we know we have the peacekeepers, we have the control of supplies and food and coal and energy and all that kind of thing. We know they have very strict laws that can very frequently lead to flogging, whipping, and even death. And even using the fear of what life was like before. And obviously, like, the war and the rebellion and how terrible it was and how terrible things were before they put peace, as they use it, into place, are always he ensues control. But the games, it always comes down to the games being the core of it. So we mentioned it a bit already, but we mentioned the new peacekeeper thread, right? And it's like Katniss and Peter win the game, and it draws unwanted attention to District 12, attention that they haven't had before, which, ironically then makes them lose the freedoms they had before, because before nobody cared about District 12, but now they've won and they've brought attention to themselves. They now do care about District 12. So we now have Thread. We have him putting up whipping posts, stocks, giant propaganda flags, gallows. They shut down the mines for months over the winter months, starving out the people of 12. So the children have no choice but to sign up in floods for Tesserae. Like, the starvation is used to control the people and terrify them even more. Even Gale's brothers, who Gale has worked so hard to avoid them having to sign up to Tesserae, have to. Like, they have no choice because there is just not enough food. Like, they're using this to control people, signing up essentially to put their names in the hats more to be in the Hunger Games.
And yet they were kind of like forgotten about as like some backwater kind of, that's just how they will be, this is how they will, like, they deserve to be forgotten kind of thing. They'll never win the games, let's just leave them to their own kind of devices, in a sense. Obviously before, the peacekeepers were like unwelcome, I think is what she says, but they weren't hard asses. Do you know what I mean? They weren't going around.
Yeah, like, some of them still went to the Hob when they probably shouldn't have done. Some of them still bought their game and their berries when they shouldn't have done. Even like the head peacekeeper did before.
Some of them are willing to stand up for the District 12 citizens as well. Yeah. And the fact that Katniss knows a few of them by name, and she knows them. She knows them. The worst thing that the previous head peacekeeper did, is it Cray? The worst thing he did was allow women to sell him their bodies, which is not fantastic.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's these are women who need the money and have willingly done so. He's not murdering them.
No,
it's not that much of a step up.
It's
not that great.
Yeah, it's not great.
He's not installed gallows. He's not like executing people and having public floggings on a daily basis. He just likes his women and knows that he's an old geezer who won't get it any other way. Which
let's just hope that's all consensual. Yes, I did slightly worry when I heard that a bit.
I'm going with it's consensual because
with YA, I'm hoping.
I'm really hoping. Yeah, I think so. But going back to Thread now, the new District 12 villain, I'm assuming like the electric fence move was purely his move though, right? I don't want to assign that move to Snow. For a couple of reasons really, but mostly being the fact that I think Snow would have wanted her publicly executed for the whole nation to see. Whereas
Yeah.
the stunt that Thread pulls with turning the fence on after he knows that she's gone out, after he thinks she can't get back in, and she says that that would have been a public execution in the square for her, regardless of her victor status.
Uh-huh.
Snow would then have come down on Thread, right, from taking away his chance at it,
Uh-huh.
I guess, because he wouldn't want her killed off in some like accident or in something as minor. He wants to show her up. That sends a
Uh-huh.
stronger message than the peacekeepers in 12 picking on the way she passes her time hunting in the woods. Unless the flavor, as quote flavor, as Plutarch calls it, hasn't been decided in these games yet, unless he is like, you know what, let's get her out of the way, and then, ooh, okay, now it's getting worse, we'll make her go back in. Because I've said this
Yeah. I
happens
yeah.
before the quarter quell announcement, and so she wants to run to the woods and then can't.
I think I know I'm gonna discuss that potentially not yet in this episode, but I think by that point the game makers already
They
knew what
know.
was going to happen. The arena had been being built for years. Plutarch does mention this, that arenas are built years ahead. They're building these arenas to torment each victor. I think they knew. It just wasn't really until that game ended so badly for Snow, the 74th Hunger Games, that he was like, yeah, right, that plan, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to go ahead with.
Okay, I'm really, really interested in your points here because I think I might have a bit of pushback in this. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, yeah, tune in for when we probably argue about that. Going back to, being in District 12, the new peacekeeper Thread, and it's also mentioned Snow's eyes for hire, right? That's actually the words that she uses when she speculates, like, what must be the way that he knew about her kiss with Gale, and therefore found out by proxy that they are, in fact, obviously not cousins, because cousins don't do that. And we do
Some cousins
see
do.
this, yeah, when she like she said, when she gets stuck in the woods because the fence has come back on, she decides to jump over it, and then she returns to the victor's village. She finds 2 peacekeepers there who are clearly there to catch her out. And then Katniss remarks when she goes to put the TV on, this is when she's come back from meeting Bonnie and Twill in the woods and then talking about District 13. She says she unsettles everybody because she's turned the TV on. She says they usually only watch it when it's mandatory, or when you're not watching it because it's mandatory, you've usually got some like typical propaganda, fear-mongering from the old days, from the initial rebellion, and about the dark days, and about District 13's obliteration. So you've literally, like, it's not like today's TV. You haven't got like sitcoms and like reality shows and like game shows. The only game show they have is The Hunger Games, which is played like probably on repeat and has reruns, and propaganda.
God. Yeah,
Like,
it is basically like capital fake news TV, isn't it?
basically, yeah, that's basically what it is. Would you really want to be watching that on repeat? Not really. I
No.
think I'd just get really into reading.
So like you'd have to do something. Like it's not like you're gonna veg out if I watch a movie like we can. So like you're either being watched wherever you go, either by President Snow himself if you're Katniss, or the peacekeepers now. Before they weren't that arsed, now they are. Or if you do want to sit at home and just try and be out of everyone's way, you're being force-fed this fake news basically over and over and over again. Propaganda and the nation's like rewriting of your history and your life and anything that they want to tell you, but like you don't get enough of it. But I think this made me really question, like, this is the only flow of information that people have here, right? That's the whole idea of stamping out like any sort of flow of knowledge between districts, is that all you have is what the capital wants to push to you.
Yeah, we do
So,
get
like,
that a lot. Like, we have Katniss saying that a lot, don't we, as she's talking?
but I think part of that is a little bit of Snow's downfall as well, because
Okay.
if this is the only method of communication that you've got, and you have basically been forcing people over and over and over and over again to like brainwash them into your narrative. Whatever then comes over capital like approved TV has a lot more power than the rumors that circulate. So when Katniss does this stuff on live TV, when she does like the flowers around Rue and the berries, when she's giving Rue and Thresh's families, or what Peter's giving Rue and Thresh's families, like trying to give them some of their winnings, this now has a lot more weight to it because it's not being lost in all the other bits of narrative that you see. Like RTV now, you'd see different ways of reporting based on the channels that you're watching, or you're seeing the same kind of narrative across two different reality TV shows, but one's on an island,
brand.
one's in a jungle. Like it's different packaging. There's differences. There's other things to focus on. Whereas you've only got capital propaganda, you've only got what the capital supposedly approves of, and then you're giving a platform to these small rebellious acts. They then hold more weight because of that.
We have tons of different brands of TV that we can watch, right? They've got one brand. That brand is the capital. That brand is Panem. That brand is Snow. That's kind of all they're getting. And then they're sprinkling in this probably not capital approved stuff that sometimes Peter and Katniss does. And one line that always gets me every time I read this is when they are on the victory tour at District 11. Katniss and Peter are doing their speech, and Katniss is like, she's looking at Rue's little sister, and she's like, I've got to say something. Like I've got to say something. I feel so bad. Like she's got like waves of guilt through her, and she obviously starts to speak, and she says these lovely things, but she finishes it by saying, "Thank you." I might be getting this the wrong way around, but essentially, "Thank you for your bread," which obviously she got after kind of doing that lovely thing for Rue, and "Thank you for your children." And that always, it sends shivers down my spine, because I feel like she didn't mean to incite a rebellion with those words, but saying that "and thank you for your children," almost not applying just to Rue and just to Thresh, but to all of them. It always lands so heavy for me every time.
And so Katniss is saying, "Thank you for your children. They kept me alive." And if that was the capital saying, "Thank you for your children," I feel some kind of way now, and I don't want to dig into it too much because that just feels weird. So let's move swiftly on from that horrible thought.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Let's keep going.
And let's go back to Snow threatening someone directly and not just the entire population. It's not really getting much better, is it? But it's getting less...
I'm about to say it's not really getting any lighter, but let's keep going because I don't imagine it will.
It's getting a bit less like infanticide, child murderer. She's almost an adult. It's getting better. But Snow goes in person to threaten Katniss, and this, I guess, is going back to like his overwhelming like threat level, right? Because this dude just turns up on her doorstep all the way in 12. He is that, like, I guess, self-assured that no one will dare harm him because of his omnipresent power, having his eyes everywhere, having this level of threat over everyone, and the capital propaganda, and everyone being scared of him. He knows everyone will recognize him. His face is everywhere. But everyone's that afraid of him that he's perfectly fine to leave the safety of the capital to threaten Katniss in her own home. Like, think of like heads of state here and presidents and like the prime minister and royal families. How much like security follows these guys around? Like, you have whole like processionals of cars for like state visits and things like that. And here, this guy's like, he's got a couple of peacekeepers and he's got two people in Katniss's house, and he's like, yeah, this is fine because he's got that big and extensive army, basically, his own private army in these peacekeepers across all these districts. He thinks nothing of just turning up at her house. And this is the thing as well, like, so this is such a weird thing. And Katniss says to her mother, the reason that he's here so she doesn't worry is that he visits every one of the victors. You just don't see it on TV.
Yeah.
And she buys it. She buys it.
Does.
This guy is so self-assured. He gives off such big dick energy. He can just walk around the entire country as if, I mean, he does own it, as if he owns it. He does own it, but no one's going to question him
I think
at all.
I think it is because he is so scary, and I guess her mom wanted so bad to believe and find out that it wasn't anything bad, that she was just going to take any kind of normal explanation that she could. And obviously, but we see how creepy he is, right? He is a really creepy person. I've obviously said already that, you know, he has snake-like eyes, he gives her chills, but also it's this description of this like rose stench that comes off of him. And she kind of remarks that the rose reeks so much it must be artificially made. So obviously, I guess we learn later on to mask that smell of blood, mask that smell of poison. But can you imagine being sat there in your own home and just this like smelling this horrible rose stench?
But
Make you feel unwell.
he's then so interlinked with that smell that like he leaves her a rose, right? In her, I think is it in Mockingjay? Like when she goes back to the house and there's a rose there and it smells like him. That stink, both of them work.
Yeah.
Becomes so like intertwined with him and his threat that even just looking at it and she feels the same level of revulsion. And like, yeah, it must smell of blood in his death because the dude's a fucking vampire. Like, he just sucks the life out of the nation.
Yeah.
He still takes the blood of children, just in a very, very different way. He is just still that threat.
Like, he makes me...
Gets worse.
Yeah, he makes me so uncomfortable. And it also makes me so uncomfortable how, you know, we've now established this 80-year-old man not only has beef with a 16-year-old girl, but also gets way too involved in said 16-year-old's romantic life. Like saying, you know, convince me when discussing Katniss looking to be in love with Peter on the Victory Tour, and then whispering, this is the word that really gets me, whispering in her ear, I know about the kiss.
It sounds like a jilted lover. Like, when you take that out of context.
It makes my hair stand up on its end every time. Like, because he also remarks that his breath smells like blood. Like you said, like you can imagine him. She says, I can imagine him like dipping a biscuit in a teacup of this stuff and drinking it. That really does play into that whole like vampire, like immortal idea that you have going on, and it really does make him appear evil. That she visualizes that.
Right. Sorry. I'm stuck on the I know about the kiss because
it's weird.
As you've whispered it, literally, and it's one of those things where until you've literally acted it out, I've gone, oh my God, because it feels like a jilted lover. It feels like you've cheated on your husband and he's walking past you because you've kissed someone else. It feels like because she's not completely enamored with him, because she's not so deep into the narrative he wants to spin, she has cheated on his nation, basically. That's what I'm getting from this. I'm like, oh my God, he needs to have everyone be scared of him and have them literally like locked up in his dungeon, like some sort of, I guess, it does feel kind of lovery. It does. It feels like, but instead of love, he wants fear.
It's so uncomfortable because obviously he goes from being like, I know about the kiss, and then it gets even more uncomfortable with his involvement in her love life. Because how weird is it that Snow approves her wedding dress? Approves the wedding dress for Katniss, who might be like, what, 17 now? And then makes Katniss wear her wedding dress for the interviews the night before the 75th Hunger Games, when she is probably going to die. She's 17. He's 83.
Is that not very problematic?
Yeah. Is that not just so weird? Like it's not even related. It's not like a dad being like, "Oh no, the wedding dress looks a bit weird. You don't look good in that." Like it's weird.
The dude does it just to like twist the knife in as well. So like he's not just being creepy. He's being like murderously threateningly creepy as well at the same time. It's so much further than just weird, because like he actually like enjoys toying with her like a little puppet that he wants to make like dance to his tune. Like the Katniss literally says like all she was thinking about was trying to keep both her and Peter alive. She rebelled by accident, really. Like she challenged the Capitol because they could only have one tribute to live, and that was all her rebellion was. But like you're gonna focus on the fact that the girl just wants to survive. Like, take away the love. Take away, like, this whole relationship, which you're going to hyperfixate on in a very, very freaking creepy way. Like, of course you're going to try and find a way out if someone said to you, you can both live for like a week solid. Even if you don't love the person and you've just sort of come to have some sort of camaraderie with them and found an ally in them, you're going to try and not kill them, right? That's just like it's a normal reaction.
I don't think Snow. I don't think as I'll be getting to Ballad. I think we'll see that Snow doesn't really think that way. He doesn't really care when his friends die.
I mean, I can't refute that, can I? But like, but you've literally you just want to make her dance to your tune. Like there's with the wedding dress, with the romance, with the engagement, with all of it. Like you just want to play her like a puppet. You don't want to have any free will at all, no matter how innocent any of this is. You just want to make her do what you want, like she's your own little marionette. And if we go to like the actual timeline of this, the time that he's threatening Katniss, there have been no uprisings. There's some murmurings. They're thinking about it. There's a little bit of tension going on, but it's before the victory tour. People are more just a bit more angry than downtrodden compared to usual. People are just thinking, like, good on this girl for managing to pull one over on the Capitol and letting them both live. But then dude rocks up and lays it on, like, super thick. Like, he is there going, well, everything's gonna go under. It's all gonna go downhill from here, and it's your fault, basically. And he's just setting her up for failure because she's not the cause at all. She isn't at the root of all this. She's just the figurehead. She's just someone, and a one act that was put on his Capitol propaganda TV. He did it. This went on his TV, and so because he allowed her to slip through the cracks, she becomes this like figurehead, and they all rally behind her. But it's not that she's done anything that's remotely worth it. And because of that, she can't fix it. There is nothing she could do that would fix this solution. And you're not telling me that he doesn't fucking know that, right? So he is literally just torturing her with this Katniss Peter romance, convince me stuff. He's torturing her for no reason. If you know it's a lie and you're going to use Gale's kiss as that, which I'm going to get onto because even that itself is questionable. But you've literally said, I know it's fake, but convince me it's real. I'm sorry, is that not an oxymoron? If you know something is a lie, nothing that you can do will convince someone it's the truth when they know it's a lie.
Well, we do get into that. Obviously, the further when she comes back from the victory tour, she sees in the mayor's office, she sees the kind of breaking news from District 8, right? And she sees the rebellion happening there and what she calls the uprising. She does remark, she's basically like, oh, President Snow's basically played me.
There's nothing
like
I could have done.
these people were so repressed that literally a little spark could set them off. All they needed was that little spark from the games. She couldn't put out that flame. She couldn't stop it no matter what she was going to do. Snow knew that, and he was just playing with her and getting her to do all these things on the tour so she could distract the Capitol, just try and distract the districts as much as he could, but also distract Katniss from doing anything to really aid the rebellion in the meantime, because she was so preoccupied and worried about it happening and scared that she wouldn't necessarily think about joining them during that time. So she does remark like, oh, it was going to happen regardless of what I did.
But like, he's distracting her from something that's not even on her radar at this point. She just wants to live a happy life and figure out how the fuck to get out of this mess with Gale and Peter. That's like all this girl wants to do. And he's set her such an impossible task to even, like, there's no way she could have ever, like, brought any of this down.
like something I obviously want to talk about is how he does all this, Snow, right? And then Katniss does remark that one of the only privileges they still had in 12 was either the right to marry and to marry whoever you wanted, or the option to not marry at all. Which obviously we know that was going to be Katniss's original decision, was not going to be to marry at all. I know we'll be speaking about Katniss's love life more in the next few episodes.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that
but
real deep.
Snow does manage to strip all of this from her, even the basic fundamental freedoms of either wanting to marry, choosing who you're marrying, or not marrying at all. She ends up then bloody getting engaged at 17 at the end of the victory tour. That just got taken from her.
And one of the things that gets me about this is like, where is the evidence that she doesn't love Peter, right? Because I mean, yeah, you've now demanded that she marries this guy. Basically, like they have to be together now forever, and that just pushes her away from him. Because if someone tells you something, you obviously don't want to do it, do you?
Yeah.
It's like when you're in school and like, oh, you got to read this book for class, and suddenly you actually hate reading that book. It becomes the hardest thing you could possibly do because someone said you have to do it.
Yeah.
It's like that. And any teenager you say don't do that thing, they want to go and do it. You've said do it, they don't want to. So like you're trying to like torture her with this. You don't love him, but I'm gonna make you marry him anyway. Where's your evidence? You're only using the one kiss with Gale, right? She didn't ask for that kiss. She didn't reciprocate it. Didn't ever bring it up again with him. They just go back to being friends and doing what they always did. Like they're still out hunting. They're still just being Katniss and Gale. Like they're not together. It's hardly damning evidence to use against them to be like, you now have to go and do this thing. Like I'm gonna hold this over your head that I know it was fake. I know everything. Let's remove even Gale as a person and just say, okay, right, since they've been back in 12, they haven't been as soppy and romantic. They've not been like attached to each other's hips for a little bit either. Say you've like fallen in love with someone in a highly pressurized environment like the Hunger Games. Surely it is fair to want to spend some time apart to try and deal with the trauma that you've both suffered.
And that makes sense.
And then you're going to push them together and force them to not cope with whatever's just happened. Like, you can't. I mean, clearly you can because it's Snow, but you can't put someone in such a shitty situation of your own making and then blame them for it.
I do find it funny though. Well, funny is a loose term, I guess, but the beef that these two end up having, and even though it's terrifying, and even though he's really, really creepy, I do find it funny how when Snow comes to visit Katniss, obviously with no warning at a house before the prep team arrive for the victory tour, Katniss doesn't even bother to offer him a chair or like welcome him. And I guess she does remark it's because he views it as his property anyway, like it is technically like his house has been given to her. But I think it's just like she's just so done with seeing him, and I would be too.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like you've got this guy holding what feels like every choice you've ever made over your head, and the only person who forced you to make those decisions was him.
That person, yeah.
But then we're back to him like playing everyone like marionettes, and now he's viewing the entirety of Panem to be his property. So no wonder he views her house. And yeah, I think he says something like, "Oh, everyone seems to forget that even the president like eats and drinks."
He says that to her mum, doesn't he?
Because they offers him tea and stuff. Because I think everyone else just assumes that he'll just get it himself. That he'll just ask one of his head honchos to do it for him. Because he clearly literally owns every single person.
Yeah.
They all work for him and his capital that he puppets himself. He spends his whole life trying to control them. Like every single person. But if his actions aren't working to control these people, what does he think one little girl can fix? There literally is nothing. It is just a distraction technique. And it's just circular logic. The entire thing with Snow is circular logic. You keep circling back round, trying to figure out where his thinking comes in, and it isn't possible.
Well, this is how we know this is kind of the start of the end for him, right? This is the start and end of his reign, because he is getting to the point where he is just going around in circles and circles, trying to keep things controlled. I think that's when we start to see that control method is not sustainable long term. Even though, and I might be skipping over a couple of your points here, but like District 11 is the first time when Katniss really sees how fragile that system is. And he discusses, he says, things can easily be put off kilter. And Katniss says, oh, it must be a very fragile system. I think,
just if it can be brought down by a handful of berries, well, it is a fragile freaking system. I think one of the things that like shows how fragile it is as well is, so when they have that like speech at the end of 11, and she says thank you for the bread and everything, like this is something that even Effie says is fantastic. Like Effie, who is the Capitol's PR woman, basically, she's like, this is fantastic, this is phenomenal, well done, where'd you pull that from? Because she's like, that was beautiful for like a victor to be gracious, and that is what you're meant to do, right? No one sees that speech as wanting to incite rebellion at all. Effie thinks it's perfect, and Effie drinks the Capitol Kool-Aid, or seemingly, if you're going with my argument. But for then that to basically spark the three fingers and the whistle and
execution,
the execution, there literally is nothing, because she is now, even without faking her relationship with Peter, she is now just doing her job as a victor. And even that isn't going to work. So unless she stands up and says, hey guys, weapons down, don't start a rebellion because he'll kill you. I
don't think
what else could she do?
I don't think that even would have worked. And it would be like, oh, she's being controlled too. We're all being controlled. Light a whole lot of stuff on fire. I don't know. How do you rebel? I'm not the rebelling type.
Seems to be the way these guys try it. And then she's listing all these differences between like 11 and 12 and the guarded fence, like in 11 versus 12's being like off half the time, and the peacekeepers are a lot less brutal than in 11. In 11, they're like really harsh, over the top harsh. People are just like mainly tired and a bit downtrodden in 12, but like in 11, like when they are going through hardships, they are pissed. They are suffering more. They feel more desperate.
Yeah.
And then she literally says, President Snow is right. A spark could even be enough to set them ablaze. I'm like, yeah, a spark could set them ablaze. Then everything else could go up in flames. But you didn't build the fucking bonfire, love.
No, that wasn't on her.
Katniss is literally the equivalent of a bit of ash from a lit cigarette falling in the perfect spot to land in a perfectly stoked fire that like someone's conveniently like doused in a truck full of like 95% proof body. Like
that's been going on for a really long time.
Yeah,
absolutely soaked.
Snow has literally built this bonfire over his entire nation. He soaked it in the truck full of the strongest alcohol he could find.
Yeah.
And then just left a trail to Katniss. And Katniss has come on and a small stray spark has gone up and he's gone, oh, look, that's your fault, that is. That's you.
Oh, we all know people like that. We all know people where things will happen and they'll blame it on someone else, and it'll be like it's literally your own undoing. Like it was going to happen at some point.
But it's just I can't get through this episode without looping back on myself and without just ranting about this prick over and over and over again, because there's nothing. There is literally nothing. And then he does that little head shake in the middle of the Capitol party and tells that like no, like nothing that you did could convince me that you loved, because it wasn't about that.
Yeah, it wasn't. He never, I don't think he ever really expected that to happen. Like Katniss kind of remarks when she sees the stuff at the mayor's house, it was just all kind of a distraction ploy from him. It was all not a scheme, but wasn't being truthful. Never has been, has he?
And the thing is, if we taking him at his word, if even if he was like, you know what, yeah, if you convince everyone in the world, and I'm going to be the hardest, if you convince me that you were in love with Peter, I'll let you off. You haven't started this. You didn't know what you were doing. It's all fair game. Like, you weren't to blame for this mess. You did your best. Then she did her best. They're engaged. At your behest.
But I don't think her best was never going to be good enough.
Because it wasn't about that. But like,
yeah, exactly.
if you were gonna say like, okay, yeah, like I get it, you like him, like, you know, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Like they're engaged, and the whole freaking train knows that they are sleeping in each other's arms. They have been found by the prep teams, and Effie started being like, keep it, like, come on, like hide it a
Yeah.
little bit, guys.
Yeah.
Like
But isn't
you did.
that's what they want, though?
Yeah, so they're like, okay, cool. Well, we're not gonna like keep this under wraps, but they're
Uh,
doing that off their own back. And you're not telling me that if he knows about that one kiss with Gail in the woods, that he's not aware they are sleeping in each other's arms when no
uh-huh.
one is supposed to be looking. You're not telling me that she hasn't met his conditions. You've just changed the goalposts.
Oh, yeah. The goalposts weren't even there to start with. That's the
Like
thing, though, isn't it? They didn't
You've given
exist.
her you've given her a task, and
Yeah.
she has done the task. I think this is my big
Mm.
point. I think I finally got there. Hallelujah.
We got there,
We
yay!
got there. You give her a task. She completed the task. Just
Uh-huh.
because you didn't tell her that was a fake task and she's meant to know what the real task is, that was never her fault in the first place. What? And this is why.
That's the giant thing. It was like,
This,
when I think of snow, I do just think of what?
yeah.
What the hell? What the F?
Yeah. Because
In every iteration.
I am such a logical person. I am such a make things make sense, and then okay, right, I can see your point. Like you can walk me through any bit of confusing backwards cause and effect shit, and as long as I can see some vague thread of why I might have thought you got from A to X there because you bypassed B, like
Yeah.
I'll give you some sort of brownie points. I might not agree with him. I still think you're a bell end, but however, I will try and find some common ground and try and help you with your faulty logic. But I can't follow this. I can't follow this shit.
I also want to get onto a point that, again, I find really sad. I feel like this whole thing is just sad. Katniss remarks how when she gets home from the games, and we obviously see the parcels starting to arrive, which citizens of the Victor's district get after they win the games, and she still sees children running around with food and that they weren't going hungry, that this was like the one time she didn't feel bad about winning the games and about killing people, to then just go and have to do it again in the 75th Hunger Games.
Yeah, and like putting the victors back in the arena, I think is actually worse than just killing them.
Yeah, it
Like,
definitely is.
because it really just shows that like Snorris are all about torture as opposed to stopping the rebellion.
Uh-huh.
Like, how many times could he have actually stopped this rebellion over and over and over again? Like, he could have, if he hadn't fucked around like torturing Katniss into stuff. Like, how much could he have put? He could have put the genie back in the bottle already by this point. I truly believe if he wanted to, he could have done. He just likes torturing people. He just likes taking it too far. He just likes thinking that he is going to be in complete power and that no matter what happens, like he can always rein it in. He can just play with them a little bit more, like you're playing with your food if you're a kid.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can just like wipe them all out. Like you could have stopped the rebellion by killing the people inciting it. You didn't need to bring the victors into this. You didn't need to play on everyone's emotions. You've basically traumatized a bunch of kids in their first arena. If they win, they've got nightmares about the time there. Like Peter, Katniss, Haymitch, all of them have nightmares. The majority of the victors must do as well.
Yeah.
Like if you have victors or anyone who is being a problem, this is so much worse than what you could have ever done to them in any
100%.
other way. Like, and it's not even the fact that them just going back into the arena as well. It's the fact that they know there is the chance of them going back into the arena. The fact that this gets announced 4 months before the actual reaping. And Katniss is the only girl who could possibly go back in.
Yeah.
You've just psychologically tortured her for 4 more months.
Waiting for it to happen. And she knows it's coming.
And she's literally like brought up all these like ways that she will say goodbye to her family because girl realizes that she ain't gonna make it out alive again.
Yeah.
Once she's in the Capitol's clutches, she won't be coming out. And then you don't even let her say goodbye to her family.
It's so heartbreaking when that happened. I was like, and like going back to Snow's chosen twist for the games. It comes as no surprise after Katniss and Peter's direct rebellion with the berries that he chooses this year to reap them again. And knowing Katniss is the only female victor, like you said, still alive from District 12, and therefore will have to be reaped and go into the games again. And she's thinking, oh, she surely cannot pull off a win for 2 years in a row. Well, joke's on you. She does, but in her own unique way. It was probably like the worst decision he could have made. It really was the decision that started his downfall.
He could have stopped this so much earlier. Like, I mean, every decision that Snow makes leads to his downfall because he just keeps stacking the dominoes up, like, and one fell swoop's going to knock them all down. But, like, you have given her then chance to train. You've warned her.
Yeah.
Months in advance this time. Her, Haymitch and Peter have their own little career training montage going on.
Yeah.
They're coming up with strategy. They're literally watching like all the backlogs of all the games. Like you've ripped almost everything away from her. You have given her no choice. You have backed her into a corner, basically. But the thing is as well, she's still not the one you needed to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's obsessed. He's obsessed with the 17-year-old. Like, and this decision he makes, not only does that put Katniss back in the arena where the rebels obviously ultimately pull her from and helps launch their plan, but he also royally pisses off a whole group of victors. New tributes and obviously ones that dodged the bullet alike by not getting reaped again. Now we're going to speak about the victors themselves in a later episode. We have a whole episode dedicated to them. But I want to speak about the Capitol's relationship with the victors here because I think it does directly link to how Snow tries to control everyone. We've spoken before, obviously, in our earlier episodes about the capital citizens, how Snow tries to distract the capital citizens in some of the districts by using the victors as celebrities and using the games as a spectacle and getting to know everything about the lives of the tributes. Like, you root for the ones you want to win and you cry when they die, kind of thing. But these games are now using these celebrities, which the capital citizens have grown to love, supported, even watched grow up in Phoenix's case, because he won the game so young, which breeds a sense of outrage even within the capital citizens, which we haven't really seen before. You can feel a sense that even the capital citizens start to feel like, with this all-star series, that it goes against what the games really initially standard for. And this is really where we start to see some opinions and perspectives shift, and we start to see people even in the capital like Cinna and those kind of people getting a little bit more trigger happy and brave.
Yeah, this is the thing, like even the capital citizens who watch this, they don't like the victors going back in. This isn't like the all-star reality series that we see in real life where like you just see the people that you know and love a little bit more on TV. Like you get to know their personalities more because you're seeing more of them. No, now you get to watch them be murdered live on TV.
Lovely.
That's kind of how this is going. Yes, let's like make basically an entire cult following effectively around these kids who've just like had to commit murder to live. Fantastic. And now you're going to see them get murdered after you've grown to love them all these years. Yes. And a lot of these people, these capital citizens basically like treat their tributes like subs, also kind of like pets as well. They're kind of like they can do no wrong. They are like there to be loved and adored. It's kind of like your own little like safari where, oh, look at these people, they've come out of the districts.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this lovely zebra. No, this is Finnick. He murdered people with a trident. But isn't he hot? Like,
but isn't he though?
And and I mean, the guy who can wield a trident, like, I'm not against. But and now you're gonna like have all these people, you've profited off them, you've turned them into the capital's darlings. That's literally what you have done with these games. So do you actually really expect this to go down well?
I don't think you really thought the whole thing through very well.
Do you genuinely believe this much in your power to manipulate people's emotions that you think you can get them to be on board with this? And then going back to the wedding dress briefly, like Snor's the one who ordered Katniss's final interview dress to be her wedding dress, right? Her team tried to object to this, the capital team, but they obviously got ignored. but who does this really taunt? Like, Katniss, yeah, sure, but you've made Katniss and Peter the Capitol's darlings.
Yeah.
This is so much bigger than a celebrity or royal wedding, and you have literally, like, put time and effort into getting the Capitol to vote on her dresses. There's been whole programs dedicated to which of these dresses do you think Katniss should wear. They've submitted all these designs. It gets down to 6. She has a full photo shoot before the Court of Quell announcement. There's a whole TV show dedicated to what dress will Katniss wear to get married in. Let's see the options. And now you're like, yeah, no wedding soz. No wedding soz. Do you think they're paid? Do you think, like, on like TV shows where you enter like competitions to win, do you think they had like a payment to cast their vote in?
I hadn't even thought about
Capitol?
that. People
Because
had
then, like,
they got money from that, from people kind of voting for the wedding dress they wanted to wear because like so invested in it. People were paid, like, I guess kind of like you do with reality TV shows in the UK sometimes when you have to make like votes and stuff. Yeah, if people had done that and then, oh wait, no wedding because they're gonna die, I'd be annoyed. My money's like all wasted.
I'd be well pissed.
Yeah, that's not clever of you, Snow. Like, why did you do that? That's really stupid.
Like, even if it's, because obviously I'm just going to assume that Snow and the Game Makers are money grabbers the entire time. Like, yeah, a lot of times now on the UK TV you get like free votes because you have to, because no one used to vote before because you have to pay for it. But you still have the option to pay to vote, right? You've made them Capitol darlings. I'm assuming you've taken their money off them. Even if they don't care at all about like some of these victors who've gone in, I don't think they give one about some of the morphlings and stuff, people who aren't active in society. Whereas Mags, Beatty, even the ones who aren't like Capitol glamorous, they wouldn't really care about. They'll care about Katniss, but they'll care about the money.
They're all kind of money centric, aren't they? And like getting kind of away from that, another point I want to mention is the treatment of Darius. Yeah, like obviously at the start of Catching Fire, you know, we had that interaction with Darius and Katniss in the Hob, and they kind of have like a friendly mocking kind of thing going on. But after the new head peacekeeper Thread arrives, not only does he get punished for not intervening on Gale's whipping with Thread in the official manner, like one of the other peacekeepers does, but he then gets his tongue cut out to become an Avox, and on top of that, gets added onto Katniss and Peter's Avox staff for their apartment before they're about to go back into the games and potentially die. So it's like really rubbing salt into the wound, like saying this is what you get if you are lenient with people from your district, even if those people are victors. It's like Snow is saying nobody is above the touch of my control, and there is no situation I cannot manipulate. Like, I can make sure this exact person from your district is somehow in your apartment. Like, he's somehow managed that.
But he also taunts Haymitch as well with it as well. It's not even just about Katniss at this point, because Haymitch has probably a longer relationship with Darius than Katniss has, with obviously the Hob and the white liquor and stuff. And then I'm going to move on from Darius really quickly because he really, really upsets me as a concept, and I will start crying. My mascara will run. But
is this also going to make me cry?
Yes, very, very briefly. I have to mention Cinna. I have to, because he gets killed right in front of her, right before the games. Like, she doesn't have the same kind of, I guess, relationship with Cinna as she does with Darius. Probably it's a deeper relationship in a way. It's based on less time.
Yeah,
but
they understand each other more.
Yeah, and he helps her in what is probably her hardest moment, because that's the like facing your death for the Hunger Games. And it's not even just the fact that he gets killed for his like Mockingjay dress transgressions.
Yes.
God, that's a tongue twister and a half. Why did I say it like that? It's not even just that. It's the fact that they literally wait until Katniss is at her most vulnerable, when she is locked in the tube that will take her into the games that she'll probably die in, because that's what the Capitol want.
And they delay it, don't they? It's definitely on purpose. They delay the tube going up. Yeah.
And so he is literally like being beaten to death in front of her, and she is locked in. She cannot help anything. And this is right before she's about to go into the arena with like on the starting platform towards the cornucopia with a
Uh-huh.
bunch of previous victors who are all older than her. Like, this is the worst possible time this girl could be thrown off her game.
Yeah.
And it isn't like she had any say over what costume she wore.
See,
She isn't to do anything with this.
I also have another very, very quick question that I've just thought of. Obviously,
Okay.
like, Cinna is a stylist for District 12, right? He's a stylist
Mhm.
for Katniss and Peter. Before they go into the games, their stylist is meant to sit with them, right? Like, clean them up, dress
Yeah.
them, sit with them before they go in the tube. Who's with Peter?
Portia.
Oh,
So, like, I think, like,
okay.
Cinna and Portia work as a team. I think
They're like a
Cinna's,
team.
like, yeah, but I always kind of picture Cinna as, like, chef and sous chef for Portia. Like, I feel like
see. Okay.
I see, like, Cinna being, like, like, higher up in it, I guess. I think because Cinna requested 12, I think that's why I kind of feel like Cinna requested 12 because he had vision, because he had
Yeah.
something that needed saying.
Mm.
That might be because we only see Cinna realer because Cinna's assigned to work with Katniss, rather than like it might be an equal partnership. I don't think Portia gets anywhere near the same level of treatment, but Portia's
'Cause-
after Peter, and Peter's not the big
yeah, because obviously
big
Cinna
problem.
gets murdered and beat up. Do you think Portia would have had a
Well,
similar treatment, or do you think she was kind of let go because she was technically Peter's?
I think she was technically Peter's, and so I think she was she might have been questioned.
Uh.
She might have had the same kind of treatment as Boris and Mags had. That we'll get into later on, like, because she must have had some knowledge about it because she works so closely with Cinna.
Yeah.
But in that case, she would have expected something to come back with, like, Haymitch and stuff as well, because he's still part of the mentorship team, and they have conferences between the stylists and the mentors, right?
Yeah.
It's all one big joint thing. I don't know, like, it's
Yeah, sorry, I know it's really off topic, but I did just had that
how far
thought.
did that, like,
Yeah.
punishment of Cinna go? Like,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting topic because like, I'm literally here saying, like, Katniss had nothing to do with her outfit that she wore, and yet she is being punished effectively by watching Cinna be beat up.
Yeah.
So if Katniss, who had zero say in her outfit, it was made for her before she even got to the capital, then how are you justifying not having the same blowback on anybody else in the team? Because Haymitch doesn't mention that he was targeted because of that attack. Unless he has just played drunken buffoon to a T,
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, as you playing that,
where,
I'm just drunken card.
like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know my own name right now. I've had too much tequila, kind of thing. Like, possibly. But, like, going back to, like, Candice's disadvantages going into these games.
Yeah.
Because in the middle of the game, she goes so far as to actually, like, list all the other skills that the districts bring, right?
Yeah.
Because not only is she, like, the newest victor, she's the youngest. I think the youngest guy's Finnick, right?
When he
Is
wins.
Joanna younger than Finnick at this point? So at this point, he was 14 when he won 10 years ago. He's missing 24 now.
Yeah.
She's 17, Peter's 17. How old's Joanna? I still want to say, like, 20s.
I often want to say she's late, mid to late 20s. I think the game that Finnick won and the game that Joanna won, I think, was very close together, I believe.
So, like, I'm seeing, like, this kind of age range here of Peter and Katniss being younger, smaller. Obviously, like, we know scientifically that oftentimes you're still developing, like, brain capacity and, like, growth and muscle mass and stuff until your mid-20s anyway.
Yeah.
So they are where they were kind of at a mid-range advantage for, like, age and height, based, like, compared to, like, Rue and, like, the 12-year-olds and stuff who've been in other games. They are now the youngest and smallest, and the I guess least experienced in Capital's games and how to work within this system. Like every other victor has kind of had some practice at keeping like stum on what they feel and how to like mingle. And they've also then had more chance to get sponsors. Yeah, Katniss and Peter have taken the world by storm, but are you going to pick Katniss and Peter over Finnick? Are you going to pick Katniss and Peter over someone that you've watched for years? Like, they are still like the underdogs in that sense. And then you add in all the skills that everyone else seems to have. So Joanna's from the lumber district. So Katniss says she's probably been throwing axes around like they're nothing since she was a kid. Finnick's good with a trident because he's from the fishing district.
Yeah, he's not good.
Like a fish.
He's great.
He's like,
trident.
He swims like a fish. Like, she literally comments on him like he's not just swimming. He looks like he's at home in the water. So like that getting from the starting podiums to the cornucopia, he has a bigger advantage there. Beatty knows all the electrical workings. He's like a scientist. So he's got a huge knowledge of things that most other contestants won't even dream of. And what do we know about these arenas? They are constructed.
Yeah.
He's going to have more idea about how a lot of this stuff is made. Even when they're like talking about his electrical trap, like no one has any idea what this dude is talking about. They're just like, okay, he seems to know what it means something to him, so do we trust him?
They're like questioning him, right? And they're like, well, how do you know it will do these things? And he's like, because I invented it. That's why I know it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you smart, kind of like.
Yeah. He's smart.
And then she goes back to like Rue and her knowledge of plants because she grows up harvesting them the whole time. So she can survive the land easy enough. Like most other regions like begin to learn their district's trade early on. They at least have some fighting chance in one advantage or another, even if they aren't careers. So, and then you go back to, even if like you take Haymitch's like actions from Sunrise on the Reaping out of this scenario, and Katniss just says that they learn their trades later on at 18, and so they don't have this advantage when they're reaped. Even if you take away Haymitch's like influence in this, there is still a big disadvantage specifically for District 12. Because you're not telling me that if that wasn't the case, like it wasn't engineered that these guys don't have an advantage at all, that there would have been any more victors between this time. Like you have the winner for the 10th games, who we will discuss later on, when we get around to Ballad. But that means that between the 10th games and the 50th second quarter quell in 40 years, only one person won. And
it's
then
not great odds, is it?
It's really not. You're not telling me that any other district has such poor ratings. In fact, I think the whole thing is there's not been that any other district has more winners than 12 has. Now, you're not telling me that District 12 having no advantage at all, being like a complete loss for any skill they can use, you're not telling me that isn't by design. You're not telling me this isn't personal for District 12, Snow.
Well, yeah, we might get into Ballad, why that might be personal, again, because of his beef with a 16, 17-year-old. At least for that one, they were the same age. Just to say that. Snow keeps saying it like every damn time that like his main goal is peace, right? But I feel like it's used like quite loosely and maybe in some twisted way. Snow actually thinks that's what he's doing, but it's only really peace for the very, very select few. And I'm not even fully convinced that it's peace for Snow, because he's probably trying to keep all these little categories and these little things under the little hats and keeping things under control. Like that cannot be peaceful. And even the capital citizens might be essentially gaslit into thinking they're living in peace. But as we'll discuss later, not even the capital citizens themselves are above the rules that Snow imposes. We've mentioned that with Cinna. And Snow himself tries to describe to Katniss when he makes like his threatening visit at the start before she goes on a victory tour, how the system could be thrown if people step out of line. You cannot tell me that even this guy feels relaxed or peaceful. Is anybody feeling relaxed or peaceful? Is it actually worth it?
Yeah, who is the peace for? Because
Yeah.
none of the districts have peace,
No.
really. I don't think the capital, are they peaceful? Well, I'm gonna get onto this in a bit because I think I have a big rant about what Snow thinks of the capital themselves.
Mhm.
But yeah, he can't be relaxed. I mean, unless he gets some. I mean, he probably does. He probably does get some sick satisfaction by torturing everyone. I think this is kind of the guy he is. I think he enjoys this, but I wouldn't say it's peaceful.
No. Who's this
I wouldn't
peace
call
for?
it that.
Who
No, I
is
wouldn't.
this actual peace for, Snow? Because you keep saying it, but I'm not convinced.
But then if he does talk about how delicate this system is. Like, he does talk about how fine a balance that he has to strike here.
Mm.
Like, that can't be peaceful. I've pulled the direct quote, I think, here, but my notes as well. He says to Katniss, "Do you have any idea what revolution would mean? How many people would die? What conditions those left would have to face? Whatever problems anyone may have with the capital, believe me when I say that if it released its grip on the districts for even a short time, the entire system would collapse." So you are admitting that you are literally keeping everyone in a vice-like hold. You aren't granting them any freedoms. You are keeping them contained. That can't be relaxing. That can't.
Yeah,
Like, how
Yeah.
are you really this content with this level of stress that you want to try and keep? Like have you ever been, like, as a kid to, like, one of those, like, fun bars on holiday, where, like, they had to try and, like, spin a plate on a stick or something, and I could never master it. I don't know why, it's because I had weird holidays.
Where did you go on holiday?
I think this might have been Gran Canaria, and they had, like, a kids like section of, like, one of these bars I used to beg to go to, and there's photos of me trying to spin a plate on a stick. It's a plastic plate, obviously, because I'm like 8 years old. But I used to beg to go to this like bar that had the spinning plates thing. And if you ever tried to spin a plate on a stick, it's bloody hard.
I have not. I will take your
Really
word
hard.
for it. I will take your word for it.
But that is literally what Snow is doing.
Yeah.
He's trying to, like, balance everything on a knife's edge, and it can be brought down by a handful of berries.
It makes me cackle every time.
I love when she says that. I'm like, yes, girl.
It's like,
you call him out to his face.
Katniss says Snow is trying to, like, convince her that he cares about the safety of all the people in Panem, right? But she says she knows that it can't be any further from the truth. And she even says, like, "Oh, I can't believe I have the guts to say this." And she does.
Like, to his face.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
I love her. I love her so much. Like, I know we've sort of, like, gone to town there a little bit in the previous episodes for, like, you know, Katniss, Gale versus Peter and stuff, and the treatment of her mother. But damn, girl's got balls. Like, I'm so proud of her. But going back into whether the capital cares about anyone at all, safety or prosperity, or whether it cares about anyone's peace. Now, you brought up Bonnie and Twill earlier and their little interaction with Katniss, and as I was prepping the notes for this episode, I kind of went down a little rabbit hole.
You always do.
I always do.
What rabbit hole is this one, Rach?
This rabbit hole is probably less controversial than my other rabbit holes, I will admit. But do you want to hear my theory? Do you want to hear it?
Yeah,
right, so
go on.
Katniss's first time that she ever sees anyone from another district that is not arranged by the capital is when she sees Bonnie and Twill, right? Information must not spread. God forbid they spread info between anyone that isn't 100% Snow sanctioned. So yeah, Snow's, like, stamped out all of the information flow so people, like, don't know the conditions of other districts and, like, what the general, like, feeling and tension is, like, of our rebellion there. But it also stops rebellion from evolving, not from spreading, but from actually evolving. So, like, Bonnie and Twill, like, in Katniss's lake cabin, they've got out and they're telling Katniss about what the plan was in District 8. Now, if you hold back the information from flowing between districts, not only do you stop other districts seeing successful uprisings, but you also stop them from hearing about unsuccessful ones as well. Now, hearing about unsuccessful ones might not seem like a a bad thing on the surface. It might seem like it keeps on top of control more because oh look, like 5 failed.
Mhm.
But you also would get to hear how those plans failed and how those plans could be improved upon. So
Yeah.
it stops other districts from getting creative about it as well. And it also stops the capital from having to be creative in their methods to stamp on it down, which gets us back into the whole like Snow's circular action again, how he just keeps recycling the same thing over and over and over again and expecting it to keep working. They don't need distinct plans of action in the districts anymore for like evolving rebellion. Like if you had the flow of information, you could use what didn't work to build and build and build, and then the capital would have to be more creative in how they stamp down on top of it. If you don't have to keep adapting and keep building and keep finding new ways to quash the rebels, then you can use the same plan over and over.
Right, yeah, I
and
get what
because
you're
you're
saying.
stopping that flow of info, but that also means that you aren't evolving your methods. So when things do break out, they can run rampant right all over you. So this is the thing. So they were talking about eight's plan. They were targeting certain buildings to take over, right? They were looking at the Capitol building, the Justice building, and the main centers of business, and they were using the Victory Tour as a plan for who would be stationed where, and they had a whole dry run. And now, because you've given this information of, well, this didn't work because the capital brought in reinforcements, so it was harder to bring down this building than we thought. People can now, if this information got out, build off that. You could coordinate rebellion. You could, if you're literally saying at this point that how did the capital stand down, or they just sent in more peacekeepers? They just redirected peacekeepers from one place to another. Okay, well, if you all rebel at once, they can't do that, can they?
That's a
So, like,
coordination on a grand scale. Yeah.
like that would, and I think that's why it gets so dangerous this time, because people are getting out, people are escaping, all these districts are rebelling at the same time. But because of this, and hearing about Bonnie and Twill, you also hear how the rebellion in 8 started in the factories, which is why the factories got targeted and how they escaped. They thought they were dead because they should have been in the factory that got bombed when everyone was inside it. Now, they shut those industries down and then they reopened them, and the capital bombed the factories themselves. The capital is the reason that the capital don't have the resources.
Yeah.
It's their own fault.
Yeah.
Because everyone up to this point in the capital is under the assumption that whatever's happened, something's happened in that district, and there's been some delays, some backups or whatever. And when Katniss hears this, she's under the impression that the rebels have destroyed it. Well, no, it's not anything to do with the rebels withholding anything from the capital. The capital had the rebellion in 8 under control. They had locked everyone down. They couldn't leave their houses. They were starving them out of desperation. That they closed everything. No one could rebel when you're on house arrest. There could be no coordinated attack. So you open them again and you literally just bomb the factories out of vengeance, right? You're depriving capital citizens when the rebellion has been quashed just to pull one over and just to like win in District 8. And then obviously they close the mines down. The mines get closed in 12, and there's the other things like that. You're expecting there to be rebel activity, or thinking that this is the hotbed for where it's all going to kick off, right? And so rather than just, I don't know, be a reasonable human being,
which we know is not going to happen,
you just grind your entire country to a fucking halt. Genuinely, is the power that you have so important to you that you are literally going to screw over every single person, not even in the district, in the capital as well, these people who can't get their music chips, and there's a shortage in like food supplies and all this kind of stuff, and fabric, and everyone's struggling with clothing and just generally living the lifestyle that you've basically given them. You're literally willing to like fuck all them guys over just out of spite. The only person who benefits under President Snow's rule is President Snow, because even the capital, who are supposedly immune to all this, are basically being screwed over by him, who are suffering for his love of playing everyone like they're his own personal like Lego figures he can move around the board.
Okay, so Snow brags there's been no war, right, for 75 years. But in the grand scheme of things, 75 years isn't that long a time. So what actually is he bragging about?
See, this is the thing. So I'm like, well, who benefits? Like, what's the alternative to like this level of control? Like, well, this level of control doesn't last you very long, does it? Like, how is this benefiting the country as a whole when you can't even keep this delicate balance that you've done? But it leads me back to this question, because obviously we know, and we've given him an age, we've given him 83 at this point in time, and so we know that obviously he can't be the one who started this, because I don't think he was that sick and twisted at 8 years old. Then again, maybe he was. This is Snow we're talking about. But even if you don't bring in,
this is without bringing in Ballad of Songbirds.
Without bringing in Ballad, like, you know that it's not possible for him to have started this. So what sick bastard did, but also at the same time,
we'll get into that at some point.
But at the same time, he did just keep them going and make them bigger and better, right? So the question is obviously going to tie back into the series later on when it comes to Mockingjay. But what do we think a decent leader could have done instead? Because obviously Snow takes over for someone, and someone will take over for Snow. Like, he inherited the Hunger Games setup, and obviously he continued it and made conditions probably worse for everyone, all this kind of stuff. Say it's been put into law that the Hunger Games have to continue for X number of years. Say that even he kept the Hunger Games themselves going. What else could he have done that would have kept the peace but also kept the games? Like, because the whole idea is that this whole situation, the idea of the games is that you remind everyone about the war, right? So you know what? Even if I want to agree with your symbolic murder games, I don't, but devil's advocate, say that is the main crux of it, and all your advisors and all the government officials will not let you, as a ruler, get rid of the games. What could you have done to work around that while still being within those rules? Because for me, my first mind would be, okay, cool, well, these games become a punishment for criminals, or we keep the flow of information at a nil between districts so they can't band together and organise, but okay, we'll let them be, robust and healthy enough to actually be our slaves for the nation. Like, if you were in this position, like, what compromises would you make?
I don't even know if I can put myself in that headspace of being in the position that Snow is in. But Snow has all the power, right? If he really wanted to, he
could.
He could get rid of them. Obviously, I'm not going into Mockingjay right now, but that becomes like a whole shambles situation. But at the end of the day, I know you were speaking, you could do the games, but it could be for criminals. The whole reason the games work is because it's not for criminals, it's for people's children. That's the whole reason that the games have the power that they do. If it's for criminals, it's just like the gladiators in Roman times.
But are you then but we talked about how there's a pre-reaping for District 11. So, like, there is obviously, like, and obviously the careers we've talked about, like, their personalities and their vengeance and their, like, potential serial killing and stuff. Like, there's got to be a way to maintain the spirit without being as harsh. Like, this is all hypothetical. This is all, like, what this is all basically like questioning why is Snow the worst of the worst, basically. Like, why has it got to this point? He enjoys this, right? He loves the power that he has over people. But if anyone else would have inherited it and they couldn't abolish the games, there are other things that could have been done that would not be as still horrible, sure, don't get me wrong, but still nowhere near as far as he takes them. Like, I feel like he takes them to the worst possible scenario everything could be. He makes it like to the point where you are at the brink of death, but he won't push you over it unless you really do something against it. But he will keep you dangling in that will I live, will I die kind of, even not in the games, but in the districts in terms of like food and starvation and dangerous conditions and all this kind of stuff and the peacekeepers. He makes you desperate so that you do commit a crime so he can punish you. He feeds it back around on itself the whole time.
Vicious cycle.
But there are still ways that he wouldn't have had to do that while still in keeping with the spirit of the Hunger Games that were set up.
I don't think that's even a question that I have the capacity or the knowledge to answer. I honestly, you know who I think that's a question for? Suzanne Collins. If she could answer that for us, please, because I don't even know where to start. She is the best qualified person to answer your question, Rachel.
I told you I think deeply about these things.
We do. So I guess
I take them deep.
Yeah. So I guess moving on, right? The ultimate question for this, is he an asshole for keeping peace through this bit? Right, yes. Okay, there we go. Yes.
Thanks for doing, guys. Bye.
If we're doing our scale, where does he sit on that scale of
100%.
0 being not right? Okay, there we go. 100%. There you go, Snow.
Actually, I feel like 100 might be too lacking for him. I think we might need to get a bigger scale.
Is he an overachiever?
He needs to get a bigger scale. He is an overachiever. Yeah, you know when you had those people who somehow got a higher grade than the highest grade. He's one of them. He's one of them when he gets extra credit.
Extra credit for all the horrible things that he does.
Because like I did with the question, he takes it to the furthest realms it could possibly go. The only other place he could have taken it further was if everyone had their own individual jail cells they went back to at the end of the day in the districts. That is literally like the only other thing he could do would be to literally ball and chain every single person.
I think he kind of does in a way, but we're not going to get into that right now. I think to kind of round this up nicely, Rachel, I think we need to just do one kind of closing question. And my question to you is, you're a secret capital rebel in Snow's mansion for the party at the end of the victory tour, like the victor's tour. What's your first mission?
Is this a mission I've been given or like by a leader, or is this the kind of mission that I can sort of like decide on my own? Because my little chaotic brain is saying I want to like find the source of the scent. Like, I don't know if it has any relevance to any like rebel activity at all. Like, I don't think it will benefit anyone in any way, shape or form. However, the little like curious demon in my brain will be like, I have to know. I need to know the answer. Why does he always smell like that?
Why does
what
he always
is going on? Like, because to be fair, like, you're not going to get very far in the mansion, are you? I imagine like you're going to have guards on every door who are, unless you're going to like do a Bonnie and Twill and steal a peacekeeper's uniform and start like running around the mansion on your own personal.
Well, you are a capital rebel spy. You could have the skills.
Sounds a good one.
That's very true. You could be a not very good spy. I think. Honestly, I would just end up wanting to eat all that food and get really, really distracted.
He was like, yeah, well, sorry, Plutarch.
Had other priorities.
Mission failed. I found the cake.
Yeah.
Found the cake and I found the alcohol. I don't quite know what happened after that, but I ended up in the bathroom throwing up.
Yeah,
I wasn't anything staked to your mission.
I wouldn't be a very good capital rebel spy, but at least I'm self-aware.
So we've decided that we are no help to anyone ever,
Yeah.
and we're probably going to get ourselves killed. And I should think less deeply about the media that I consume.
But I can't believe we've made it to the end of our first kind of in-depth Snow episode. I know we will have a couple more as we get further through the series and into Ballad and into some of the other books. But thank you so much for sticking around and listening to episode 7. We really, really appreciate it. It is just Rachel and I doing these podcasts after long days at
long
work.
day.
Yeah, but we really appreciate you listening to us ramble on, and we are really interested to hear your opinions on this because, like I said, it is just us two. We haven't really had much outsider input, so if you want to let us know, we'd love to talk about some of your theories too.
Yes, pop anything that you honestly have any responses to. Like, if you have any opinions to help me answer my question of what Snow could have done, like, let me know, because it is. I'm racking. I think too much deep about this stuff, don't I? I think
So you think very
far
deeply
too
about
deeply
everything.
about everything in life. I think
And
next
on
time
that
I don't. I think next time I film on less sugar.
Or more
on that
sleep.
note, and more sleep. That would also be good.
Yeah. But on that note, thanks, guys, and we will see you next time for Haymitch and Plutarch.
Haymitch and Plutarch. Yes. Bye, guys.
See you next time. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to our podcast, and don't forget to let us know your thoughts on all of our potential assholes.
No matter what platform you're listening to us on, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, upvote, and all that stuff.
If you like what we do and want to find out more, all of our platforms are listed in the description or show notes. We're a 2-person team, so any support or feedback is always greatly received.
Tune in next time to Once Upon a Red Flag. Like, yeah, it must smell of blood in his death because the dude's a fucking vampire. Like, he just sucks the life out of the nation.
Yeah.
He still takes the blood of children in a very, very different way. He is just still that threat.
Like, he makes me...
Gets worse.
Yeah, he makes me so uncomfortable.